the 9th of Av, the day we commemorate the destruction of our temple, the saddest day of the year. If any of us were given the opportunity to rebuild the temple, we would rush to do so. Tonight, we will learn why the temple was destroyed and why we continue to suffer, and what each of us can do starting today to bring the temple back.
What are we mourning? What's this all about? I never saw the temple. Some of us may be thinking, I never even visited Israel. I don't know what I'm missing. What am I mourning? As a matter of fact, up until today, I was having a great time at TheZone. We were playing baseball. I was hanging from the zip line. We were having a great time with friends. And all of a sudden, tonight, everything stopped. And now we're sitting on the floor, and we're supposed to be mourning something that I never saw. If that's what you're thinking, then we're thinking the same thing. So what are we mourning tonight? What is this destruction? Well, my friends, the destruction, the exile, when the Jewish people left Jerusalem after the destruction of the temple, that exile lasts until today in a form that perhaps is hidden. We call it life's difficulties. All right, something just didn't work out so well. To various levels. Sometimes things could be just a bit uncomfortable. Sometimes things can get really bad. Sometimes it gets to the level we call it a tragedy. But that's part of exile. It doesn't have to be that way. But this is the way it is for the past 2,000 years. This is the exile. Now, God commanded us to serve Him in joy and happiness. Throughout the year, we perform the mitzvot, we do the commandments, and we're taught to do it with joy and happiness. So we don't mourn the rest of the year. This one day of year, our rabbi set aside this one day, the day that the temples were destroyed. This is the day that's designated that we mourn all of life's tragedies.
422 BCE, the first temple was destroyed and the Babylonians exiled us. 355 BCE, Haman and the Persians wanted to eradicate us. 312 BCE, the Greeks conquered us. 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, leaving Israel in ruins once again. 1096, the Crusades wreaked havoc on Jewish communities across Europe. 1492, the Spanish Inquisition set our nation aflame. 1648, once again, Jews were massacred across Europe. 1942, the Holocaust, Hitler's final solution, implemented. Until 1989, communism nearly destroyed generations of Russian Jewry. Today, Arab extremists want to wipe us off the face of the earth.
Alright guys, I'm here along the Gaza border communities that have been devastated by these forest fires, field fires, nature reserves, you name it. The devastation here is unbelievable. You can't imagine how many acres of land has been destroyed by these kites. Now you might think, what's the big deal? It's just a kite. Yeah, it's a kite with an explosive device or some flammable material that once it lands in on Israel's side, it starts a fire either in an open field or in a nature reserve or like in this forest where I'm at right now. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to burn down our communities. They're trying to kill the people living right here. Can you imagine, guys? Can you imagine living here? Can you imagine all your livelihood, your children, your families being threatened by these fires because of a kite being flown over into Israel? It's not just a kite, guys. It's not just a bunch of peaceful protesters, if you will, on the other side. These people are lethal. They're intentions are lethal. They are trying to kill Jews living along the Gaza border on the other side of the security fence. That's what they're doing when they're calling for the Nakba Day, when they're calling for these peaceful protests as the media tries to paint it out to be. There's nothing peaceful about this. It's utter destruction. Their goal was to kill me, or my family, or my friends, the people living in Israel.
Here in New York City, we have seen a major spike in hate crimes over the past few months, with much of it on Jewish people. And according to the NYPD, the number of anti-Semitic hate crimes rose by a shocking 94% compared to a year ago. Jewish community centers and schools in 11 states have reported bomb threats, according to the Anti-Defamation League. The desecration of Jewish cemeteries have also been widely reported. Nationally, a total of 3 cemeteries have now seen large numbers of overturned and broken headstones.
We're going to hear from a man who suffered a tremendous personal tragedy. In fact, his tragedy, as much as it was personal, it was a tragedy that affected the entire Jewish nation. Every single Jew that heard about this tragedy felt it and really mourned for this tragedy.
One casket carried out, followed by another, with thousands of mourners trailing with somber, slow steps. This heartbreaking scene in Far Rockaway at the joint services for 21-year-old Yisrael Levin of Brooklyn and 20-year-old Elisheva Kaplan of Far Rockaway. The couple got engaged last week. Their deaths came Wednesday morning, their car part of a 5-vehicle pileup on the Nassau Expressway in Lawrence.
I love you and miss you. I will think about you always. This tragedy specifically is not only for our family, the Kaplan family. This is a tragedy for the whole Klal Yisrael. A story like this, a chassid and a kala, so happy. The highlights of their life, to go, it just shakes the world. We are shattered. We are broken. We are crushed. And we are numb.
Yisrael, I know how seriously you took it with our past. And you took your job you took your responsibility so seriously to send our packages. I'm going to do the same for you, Yisrael. I love you.
Listen and pay attention to how a Jew sees life's tragedies, life's difficulties as a message from God.
Everything I'm going to say now is Le'ili Nishmas B'nei Ahuvi Aaron ben Yisrael Halevi, B'nei Ahuvi Yisrael ben Yeshayahu Halevi, Le'ili Nishmas Kalasi Elisheva Basya Bas Yechiel Ephraim. Va'asuli Migdash, you should make for me a Beis HaMikdash, v'shachanti b'soicham, and I will dwell amongst them. Another way of reading this pasuk is that Hashem is not referring to the Beis HaMikdash of stone. He's referring to every Jew, and he's turning to us and instructing us. Va'asuli Migdash, you should make me a sanctuary in your heart and in your soul, v'shachanti b'soicham, so that I could dwell amongst you, my dear children, my Jewish children. How do we make a Beis HaMikdash for Hashem in our hearts, in our neshamas? We could learn from the unfortunate, tragic deaths of my son Yisrael and his kala Elisheva Basya. What was unique about Yisrael? His friends in yeshiva made a book about him, Lev Yisrael. He had a tremendously loving heart. I called him affectionately after his death, the Avas Yisrael, the one who loves Klal Yisrael, because he has such love for every individual, all his friends, even people he didn't know, young, old, people who are grandmothers, grandfathers. They all wrote stories about how much they felt close to him and how inspired they were by him. Let me just read you one sample letter among the hundreds that we received from across the Jewish globe after Yisrael passed away. To the Levins, My little brother goes to Camp Aguda, so he knows Yisrael. We live in your neighborhood, so he ended up davening in the same shul as Yisrael, the Shabbos before Pesach. My brother came home after davening and mentioned to me that he met Levin in shul, the highlight of his Shabbos. And he said that Yisrael had noticed him right when davening started, so he smiled at him, but they obviously weren't able to talk then. However, after davening was over, Yisrael came over to my brother, shook his hand, and spent some time talking to him, saying hello and seeing how he was doing. Now, my brother is 12 years old, not one of Yisrael's close friends. He's just a random camper, like 500 other boys. And your son took the time to personally come over and say hello, and I can't even begin to tell you how much it meant to my brother. It made him feel like $1 million. It was such a simple interaction, but it made such an impression on me, and it really made me think about how I should treat kids who are younger than I am. Like I said, I didn't know Yisrael well, but I have seen some of Camp Aguda's videos, and I can tell you that without a doubt, I feel like he was the happiest person in camp. He made so many people happy, constantly, and I'm sure that just the thought of him will continue making people happy forever. For a 20-year-old guy to be that kind of person is incredible, and not very many people leave a legacy like that.
That's when God looks down. And that's when God says, Jewish people are living together with such love. They respect one another. They look out for one another. God says, now is the time. Now is when I want to show my love for the Jewish people. I don't want to be hidden anymore in the way I'm hidden during exile. Our rabbis teach us one of the reasons that the temple was destroyed was because of senseless hate. Sinat chinam. When people don't get along with one another, that causes destruction in this world. If that's what caused the temple to be destroyed, that would be an obvious place to start, to rebuild the temple. Getting along with one another is not always an easy task. Sure, it's easy to talk about it, but let's think for a moment in a very realistic way. What are we going to do when there's somebody that we just really don't like? That could happen. We are human beings. Better yet, what are we going to do when somebody wrongs us? That could happen. And we feel justified.
How do we come to really feel to have to come not only to act like it, but feel the love for the other person? We have to look at the person what they really are. A person is not just a body, a person is a neshama. A person, every year there's a bonding matam we're Hashem's children. So if we look at the person what they really are, the greatness, through that we could really come to have the feeling of Av. If we really delve into it and think how important every Jewish person is. Sometimes they might not act so nice, sometimes might slip and do something, say something they shouldn't have said, or do something they shouldn't have done. But we should overlook those things by really realizing who we're dealing with. Such great people. Every Yid is so important by Kadosh Baruch Hu. Every man, woman, and child is such a great bria, such a great creation by Hashem. There's somebody really to ava for, somebody very special for us to realize who they are. But it takes thinking and action and not just hearing words and shaking our heads. We have to really take it seriously. Think about our relationships with everybody else.
I am an ancient wall of stone atop a hill so high, and if you listen with your heart, you just far and wide all came to see its beauty and its pride. But sin has Chinam brought it down, and with it so much pain. Now only Avas Yisrael can build it once again. Together, we stood by our Sinai, my daughters and sons, forever. We must stand together forever as one.
A tremendous attribute he had was his koyach hatfilah, the way he davened. His davening was something else, the way people describe it. And the interesting thing was, during the nighttime activity, he'd be on stage, doing the acting, fitting the role. But 10 minutes later, he's davening Ma'ariv, serious, talking to Hashem, communicating with Hashem. And that made a tremendous impression on all the boys, that this is what we're really supposed to be like. We're here to have fun in the summer, as you in Oorah also know. You're there to have fun, but it's also crucially important to know that I have an allegiance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to attach myself to Hashem, and I want to give Hashem nachas.
Every time we take a moment and say a prayer. If we say a prayer out of a siddur in Hebrew, that's beautiful. If we say a prayer in our own words, that's also beautiful. It's talking, communicating with God, performing God's mitzvot. Those are ways that we connect with God. That's how we bring Jerusalem back. Twice a week, we say a very special prayer. And in that prayer, we say, Habeit mishamayim ure'eh. We plead with God. Although we know, you know that we're in exile. You know our life's challenges. But please, God, take note of how we're suffering. Take note of the difficulties that the Jewish people have endured during the exile for almost 2,000 years. Smaller challenges, larger challenges, difficulties, tragedies. Sometimes tragedies beyond belief. Please, dear God, bring an end to the exile.
Habeit mishamayim ure'eh ki hayinu lagvokeles bagoyim nechshavnu kitzoin latevach yuvol laharoig uleyabed ulemako ulecherepo habeit mishamayim ure'eh ki hayinu lagvokeles bagoyim nechshavnu kitzoin latevach yuvol laroig uleyabed ulemako ulecherepo uvechal zayis uvechal zayis uvechal zayis shimechal yishachachnu uvechal zayis shimechal yishachachnu ayna al tishkacheinu.
If statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous dim puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his commercial importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstruse learning are also way out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in this world in all the ages, and had done it with his hands tied behind him. He could be vain of himself and be excused for it. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other people have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burnt out, and they sit in the twilight now, or have vanished. The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal, but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? You are the secret to our immortality. Every Jew carries on the legacy of thousands of years. Your dedication keeps us going. Your commitment is the key to our future. Together, we are one nation, unified and eternal. A chain missing even one link is nothing more than two parts. All it needs is that one little link, and they are bound together forever. Every step you take to connect to your heritage makes you a link in the chain. You are the bridge between our past and our future. Over 2,000 years, and the suffering continues. Time and again, nations have tried to destroy us. They tried to obliterate us from the face of history, and some still want to do the same. What is the answer? What are we to do? You are the answer. You are the secret to our immortality.
How could we bring Jerusalem back, rebuilt to the way it was? How can we bring the temple back? By us making an effort to come closer to God. Now, those are just words. How do we come closer to God? God's not a physical being. We can't see God. So how do we come closer to God? The prescription is the Torah. The Torah tells us step by step how we're supposed to behave, what we're supposed to do. 613 commandments. Every mitzvah, every good deed a person does is a brick. Every brick is laid one on top of the other until the building is built. All our mitzvot collectively, every time a Jew does a mitzvah, no matter where he or she may be, all those bricks, all those mitzvot add up to the building of the third temple. And that's when we will be redeemed. That's when we will come back to Jerusalem and see it rebuilt with the third temple, the third Beit HaMikdash.